We all have musical theater inspirations, and those inspirations certainly affect our writing, but how much should we let our writing be affected? Is it ever okay to copy something? Maybe as a starting place or as an homage? What about borrowing elements and techniques that you see your inspirations utilizing? They say that great artists steal, but is that actually something you're allowed to do? Today we're going to look at three of my biggest inspirations in musical theater and see how they've affected my writing in various ways. So, hey, let's do it. If you're new to me, hi, I'm Michael Reddy, aka Musical Theater Writer Guy, aka your musical theater writing coach. And if you are a returning member of our community, hi, welcome back, here we are. If you're new, just so you know, I am the founder of the Musical Theater Writing Collective, online international hybrid community of musical theater writers. I teach courses. Obviously, I do my content here on YouTube. MT Writer Guy on Instagram. Michael Reddy on TikTok. I'm everywhere. Everywhere. And I've got lots of things always available. You can check out the live stream from 2 weeks ago if you want to hear all about what I offer and provide for people in the musical theater writing sphere. But let's dive right on in here, friends. And let's talk about the first of my big inspirations. Alan Menken. Which, I'm sure he is a big inspiration for a lot of us out here. I mean, how many people who are now in the musical theater writing sphere, my age, slightly older and younger, are so heavily influenced by the Renaissance Disney films, the canon of the musical films from the late 80s through the 90s, right? And Alan Menken was a major driver here. So, I mean, there's so many ways to talk about how he has inspired me as a musical theater writer, not only because those films were some of my first exposures, like big exposures to musicalized stories, right? Musical theater stories. Even though they were films, they were still musical stories. And later I also fell in love with Little Shop of Horrors. And so I will also say it's a little bit here of a combination between Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, because that pairing was so good. But I think the Menken and Schwartz collaborations were also lovely and wonderful. So things about Alan Menken's work, though, that I ended up taking with me have to do with a lot of different elements. So first and foremost, the whimsy. He's so good at creating something that feels magical. There's a magic to the world of his musical sounds. And I think that's a large part of why he has made such a lucrative career out of writing musical theater music that sounds like it belongs in a special place, a special world, right? And so whenever I want to provide some sort of element of whimsy to something that I'm writing, I look to Menken's work and try to see what it is that he does that creates that little something extra. So a few things here. Number one, he roots highly in genre. So if we are looking at the entirety of his canon, he likes to pull from specifics, right? Whether it's the kind of like a gospel-y world of Hercules, or if we are talking about he doesn't do it a lot in Aladdin, but there are a few of those little Middle Eastern sounds that he pulls into the music, especially in the melodies. Looking at Little Shop of Horrors, all the doo-wop kind of 60s vibe of the whole thing, right? He loves genre music. So he likes to pull specifics there and use that as a base template. And I think that's great because it provides the specificity of the world. But beyond that, tunefulness. Very famously, Alan Menken is someone who does not let a song move forward until he finds that tune that is so good and so catchy, so hooky, that you cannot help but fall in love with that song. The tune is the most important thing to him, and I think that is A, hard to do, B, hard to do all the time, and C, there's an innate something there that he has that perhaps some of us don't have. But when I want to write something that sounds like a Menken piece, I look to these elements first. Like, where am I going to look for some genre? And then where am I going to look for some tunefulness? Now, in addition to all of that, what are the elements that provide some whimsy in his music? Well, I think the one that is most hallmarky, I guess, is lifting from a major key. Yes, we have the piano today, my friends. From a major key, lifting the 4th degree, and going into a Lydian mode. It sounds just a little bit more major, right? And so he does this all the time, especially in the Disney Renaissance canon. But there's also, here, I'll just pull that. I pulled over the keyboard today. I thought we might demonstrate some things, because why not? Alright, so one of my favorite examples of that is just in the beginning of Beauty and the Beast. We have that lift right there, keeping it major, even though we're in the key of D major. We have that going on. And that gives you a certain something, right? That's the most obvious version of it, but he does this everywhere. Lydian mode is just very musical theater in general, but also I always associate with Adam Menken. I just think his writing is beautiful in that way. Sometimes when I'm pulling from Menken music, it's really just these elements. Like, what genre can I pull from? How can I make a song as tuneful as possible? Just like try to make it super freaking catchy. And then that lifted 4th. Like, there's a song in The King's Legacy where I use the lifted 4th. It's an Anne Boleyn song. I want to make sure that she felt like someone who doesn't necessarily belong to the same world as everyone else. She's somewhere else. She's doing something else. And so, in a song that still exists in the show, but it used to be her character establishment song, it's not anymore, we have a lot of this lifted 4th feel. This lovely... That's just kind of like the vibe of it. It's very open, very spread, very neutral sounding, until we get to this. It happens in the bass the first time, but once we get into the song proper and she really figures out who she is and what she's doing, we have this happening. And then that begins to kind of populate the rest of her music, because she's lifted, she's somewhere else, and there's a positive bent to it, and yet we're still creating a tritone, and I want that, like, crunchiness. I think that's part of the magic of the lifted 4th. So, Lydian mode, right? So, is that a direct steal? No, it's just a little technique. He uses that, I like to use, right? But what about when we do want to give, like, a direct nod, a quote of some variety? Yeah. Okay. So, I did that too in The King's Legacy, and do I want to save this? Here, let's talk about something else very briefly, which is the use of a prologue that is rich in its sound and provides a sense of the musical world without giving away everything yet. Beauty and the Beast is the obvious example here. I mean, that prologue, gotta pull it back up. I scrolled away. Also, hi friends, if you're new to me, I usually do an Ask Me Anything at the end of the hour, so we'll see. Maybe I'll do that a little bit here today, too. You feel like I should have this memorized? Yes! Okay, so the prologue of Beauty and the Beast are lovely. We have that gorgeous... where are we? Here we are. Da, 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 da. Huh. I didn't realize that this is not the piano conductor score. This is the or excuse me, this is not the piano score. This is the piano conductor score. So I didn't know where that part was written out. But that haunting sound, right? The da 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 da, and the way that this kind of just like pulls the ear to acclimate us to something that something is mysterious. It's dark and yet it's magical, right? And that's also going to be the basis of a lot of the music that comes in later. And that then pulling us into some of the musical sounds that we're going to hear directly from songs later in the show, as we are getting this prologue of background exposition that we need to have in order to move forward into the story. I think that's a brilliant technique, right? I mean, I love a prologue anyway. I think prologues are great. I'm never mad when people do a prologue. I know some people are like, but it's cheating. I don't think it's cheating. I think it's giving your audience what they need to understand your story. That being said, the music of the Beauty and the Beast prologue is profound. It is gorgeous, and it's doing so much work. Right? You don't need an overture. That prologue's doing all the work. So, like, that's a technique that I stole for King's Legacy as well. Stole. It's not like Alan Menken created it. But, like, the opening of King's Legacy... Do I even have that score on here? Let's find out. I do not. Darn. It's okay. The opening of the King's Legacy is built in a way where it pulls us through the story that the prologue music as it stands tells its own story that directly mirrors what's happening in the dialogue, giving us all that exposition as we need it. But it's also pulling in motifs that we're going to hear later and just kind of like, not disguising them, but putting them in a way where it's acclimating the ear, but really what we're doing is we're using those motifs and telling the story that we need to tell. I think that's a beautiful technique to utilize. It's so good. Now, I did promise, what about when you want to just quote someone directly? So, there's a song in Legacy called Our Son. It's the opening of Act 2. It's a tavern number. First of all, I love a tavern number so much. It's one of my favorite musical theater tropes of all time. We go to the tavern 3 times in this show, but there's an ensemble moment, a charm song tavern number at the top of the second act after intermission. And as I was sitting down to think about what I wanted to do with it, I had all these gorgeous motifs I had written for the show, and I was like, hey, here's the thing though, I've got so many great influences of music, and I just want to make sure that they come across. I want to give I want people to know who influenced me in my writing. So this song kind of became like a little bit of a hodgepodge of different influences in here. Specifically Alan Menken. I'll get to that one in a second, but also there's a direct... It's not a direct quote, but it's a direct, clear nod to Julie Stein as well, who's a huge influence on me, and whose music has been inspiring some of the songs that I'm writing for a different musical project right now. And it's been so much fun to go through the Julie Stein canon. I mean, that music is so good. Anyway, so if you're familiar with Gypsy, this should sound somewhat familiar. So this tavern number actually opens in this minor feel, which is a reference to something else, but not important at this moment. So okay, so after we go through that, though, we get to our moment where we are introed into the song. That's what just starts us off. Now, that doesn't sound like anything specific until later on when we get... If Mama were married. It is a direct usage of those chords in that key, and that's on purpose, because I love Julie Stein, and I just want, it's like a small thank you, you know? So that's stealing with intention, with purpose, but is it stealing because it's utilized in a different way, and I don't really, like, pound out those chords, I'm not doing the same melody, but even the melody of the song is lightly influenced by If Mama Were Married, because the melody is, the queen will deliver a boy, they tell me, and we do something else, but just that descending pattern off of the, my little nod, great. What about in more direct quoting? One of my favorite tavern numbers of all time is Gaston. I just think it's such a good number. It's so well written and so well done. So when I was in Tavernland, I had to, right? Like, thank you, Alan. Here's a quote or two, right? So in our little interlude section, this only happens one time. Oh, at the end of the interlude, it's pulling back out to our final time through the chorus. We have this happening. And those are those four chords in that order. It's a direct quoting from Gaston. I mean, the melody is not the thing. Right, we're doing this. Rumors are the death of truth. You know how they could ruin lives. Unless you're like super into Gaston or Beauty and the Beast music or Alan Menken, you're not gonna catch it. But those 4 bars are just like my little, hey, thanks. Okay. I mean, is that going to get flagged in any way? Probably not. No one's really noticed over the years. Occasionally I've had someone go, hey, is that like Gaston? I'm like, yeah, it is. And that's on purpose. Like, oh, cool, right? Like, but it's, if you're doing it in homage, you're doing it with intention, you're not stealing just to steal from someone else, okay, right? Like, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. Don't take that as legal advice. But I would take that as a permission to look to your inspirations and take things that work. Try them out, and then use them as a starting place, right? You don't have to just steal and quote directly. I did here because if it weren't for Alan Menken, I don't know that I would have fallen in love with musical theater. So that's my big old thank you to him. All right, so that was number 1 as far as my inspirations. That was a lot on Mr. Alan Menken. We love you. Number 2. Kenner and Ebb as a writing team were a big influence on me, and in a way that I don't think I fully realized until later in life. Now, of course, that started with Chicago when the movie came out. Because I am dating myself here, but I was a youngin', I was in school, and that movie lit something inside of me. There was something about the way the music was put together and arranged that made my brain like turn into fireworks. I listened to that album on repeat. I watched that movie on repeat. It's just so good. It's better than the stage show, in my opinion. But there were a few things that I really took away from them that I realized later in life. And it has to do with theatricality. There are certain things that they do so smartly. Because I fell in love with Chicago first, then obviously Cabaret, of course. There are smatterings of some of their other music that I also really enjoy. I think Steel Pier is underrated as a score. Weird show, but great score. I sang a song from The Rink when I was in college. Like, their music is wild, and it's fun, and it's delightful, and they're just such a specific team. But everything they do is just so over-the-top theatrical in a positive way that fits with me. It resonates in some way. So the first thing that I really took with me was learning to slow down and take time. They don't rush. Like, so much of their music is just, I don't want to say it's languishing, because it isn't. But it's not pushing forward. It's not pressing forward, always aiming for the next thing. It is doing something that does storytelling without running forward. Hold on, I'm pulling up an example. Sure, let's look at Roxy's music from Chicago. I mean, even just the song Roxy, this. That's bold. There's nothing happening, right? The clarinet solo comes in eventually, but just this. That's so much space. To strip everything away and take your time to sit in a vamp, letting the story unfold, letting the actor do their thing. Oh my God, that is a hard thing to do. It feels so vulnerable as a writer to just sit with such sparseness. but it's effective. Very, very effective. I mean, same thing with Funny Honey, right? This. Ba-da-da-da. Ba-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. We're not running anywhere. We're letting the story take its time. And I think that that's something that not a lot of writers do anymore. There's always this rush and push forward, right? So, two things I want to say about that. Number one is that, I mean, part of the reason that I teach in the course, the flagship course about moments of rest and utilizing them through song and through other means as well, is because a lot of modern shows aren't utilizing moments of rest much anymore. And honestly, I hate to say should, but I really think we should. Emotional pacing is so important to the flow of musical theater as a genre of storytelling that when we skip over it, you notice. Beyond that, though, I think the way that they take their time and sit inside a moment musically, it's not just the moments of rest. They do it all over the place. This is a major character and plot moment, and we are just going to take our time. That's bold. We should do it more. So, I utilize that, I won't say all the time, but I really like it as a way to create a moment in a piece that stands out. Like one of the pieces of Legacy that people, like a song that people love, it's less than 2 minutes long. It's an A, B, chorus, and we're out. There's not even a verse to it. But it's slow. On purpose. Daily I sit and observe. We take time. And it feels haunting because of it. Ooh, so good. So all of this also allows a space to breathe. And that's another major thing that they do, right? By stripping things back, by taking your time, you allow space for the piece to breathe, for the actors to breathe, for the audience to breathe, and that is important. On top of that, they also love their big, gigantic theatrical moments, their big numbers, right? I mean, Cell Block Tango, such a great big moment. We all remember that. Cabaret is filled with these major production numbers, right? They know when to lean into the theatricality and when to pull back and pull off. And I don't know that that's something that you can really teach. You can talk about it, but you can't really teach it. But it had such a huge influence on me that I use it all the time. I want that push-pull. Let's heighten to the biggest heights we can hit, and let's also strip all the way back to almost nothing, right? So I do that, and then also, like, they're not afraid to use tropes, but they do it with purpose, and they do it with abandon, right? They lean into the tropes. Again, I don't think we do it enough. Don't be afraid to utilize things that have worked in the past. Just because it's considered tropey or a stereotype of some variety doesn't mean it's bad, right? Tropes exist for a reason. It doesn't mean you have to stick to the exact box of that trope. Feel free to move outside of it. But Kendra and Ed love a trope, and so do I. I think it's great. And then I often use tropes as my starting place, and then I will go from there. Like, and I mean this both in terms of character and musically. I mean, Sondheim also loves tropes, but like, for one of the later Tavern numbers, it's a comedy song. We use a boom chick. Okay. People hear that and they're like, oh, we're doing something fun. Okay, let's do it. You know? Don't be afraid of it. The other thing that I really love that I took from them is incremental harmonic shifts. Right? I mean, this is their classic, right? Right? Small changes across a measure. I mean, right? They do it everywhere. And not being afraid of a pedal tone to go with it. Maybe this time. Ah, so good. Incremental harmonic shifts are, I think, a little scary to write. Because A, they have been overutilized at times, and often without purpose. And B, like, that means you're sitting in a harmonic sound for a while. Could be a full, slow 4-bar measure like I just played. But when you choose to do it with purpose and intention, and it stands out from everything else around it, like, oh, it's so effective. So good. So good. Okay, so that's number 2. That's Kendra and Ed. Woo! Also, hi, if you're here with me live, feel free to ask questions. We'll also maybe do some Ask Me Anything at the end here as well, but I'm happy to converse with you all throughout our time here. So, starting with Alan Menken, / also Howard Ashman as well. Like, we didn't talk so much about the lyric side of things, but musically, definitely Alan Menken. Kander and Ebb as a team. I'll get to my third in a moment. Before I do, just a quick reminder / plug. Hey, that new libretto writing course is coming at the end of April. It's a 12-week course. Y'all been asking for a book writing, libretto writing course, and so here we go. I've made the thing after 2 years of y'all asking. Sorry that took some time. I'm very excited about it. This is going to be great. But for the first round of the course, only 6 people. It's called Book and Beyond. You can learn more and apply at the link that I will put in the description. After we are done today, I'll just pin it. So if you're interested, then take a look. See if it seems like a good fit for you. Apply. We'll have a little quick call. Make sure it's a good fit for you. Because why waste your time and money? All right, my third major inspiration will surprise none of you. Stephen Sondheim. I mean, Sondheim is an inspiration to us all. Okay, there's so many things about Sondheim's writing that lit my brain up, and that I just I was like, yes, this technique, I want to use it. The other thing about him specifically, though, that I really want to mention here and emphasize is that Sondheim doesn't think of himself, at least across his interviews, his books, his writing, as the one who innovated any of this. He took things that already worked and existed and brought them to what he does. And that's really what I'm talking about today, is we are taking things that already exist, that other people do, that we like, and that work, and we're taking them and bringing them to our way of writing, right? So, one of the first things about his material that kind of blew my mind was the way he focuses on long line writing. Not just across the song, but across an entire show. Right, the way that Sweeney Todd functions from the beginning of it to the end of it, in terms of melodic movement and growth and development, inner part writing, harmonics, shapes, motifing, the very operatic structure of the entire piece. There's a reason it's called his tour de force, because it really is. It's like he took everything he had ever learned about long line writing from opera and said, you know what, I'm going to put it into one piece. And there are other pieces that hit on it as well. I think Into the Woods is another very good example, but a little less so, I think, in the long line aspect. I have to sit down with the score. But Sweeney comes to my mind immediately. So unlike Kendra and Ebb, who are thinking these block chord movements, right, Sondheim is thinking about, okay, what's this melody? Where's it going? How's it going to develop? And if it's doing that, what is the bass line doing? And if the melody's doing this and the bass line's doing it, is anything happening above the melody? And what is that line doing? How's that progress and grow and develop and change? And then what are the inner parts doing? How many inner parts are there? And how are they interacting with one another to create a chord structure, to create a progression? And sitting down and studying his music blew my mind. Just boom, done. Good. So good. Related to that is the way that he motifs and relates it to character. Again, he didn't invent this. This is an operatic technique, leitmotif, but he took it and he brought it to musical theater in such a very specific way. Now, I've talked before about Into the Woods and the Bean theme, right? The ba 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 ba, and how that is the center of melodic movement for anyone who deals with the beans at any point, or when the beans come up, and it gets twisted and changed, and just, it's so smart the way that he takes motifs, creates them, adjusts them as needed for the story, and puts them together, and they become the basis for all this music, right? So that is something that I do all the time. Like the initial idea of creating the like music mapping that I do with motifs and just like seeing how things progress, it largely comes from looking at Sondheim's canon because he's a master at it. Something else about his music is how whimsical the melodies get. You know, we talked about tunefulness with Alan Menken. It's not that Sondheim can't be tuneful, although he was criticized plenty for not being tuneful. So much so, it's directly in Merrily We Roll Along, right? A tune, something that goes bum 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 binum, that whole thing. But tunefulness was also important to Sondheim. So much so that when the first time I sat down to like write a quote unquote Sondheim song was for The King's Legacy a long time ago. This song does still exist. Different form, but like still exists. And what I came up with as the tune, and so this was my personal goal, was to write a song that was somewhat Sondheimian in some way in 2013 or 14 or whenever this was. And this is still the song that people go, you know, Reigning Over My Kingdom, that's very Sondheim. Like, yeah, it is. And it's just this little tune. Oops. I think I want to climb a tree, Annie. I want to be upon the tallest branches. I want to know what all the birds and creatures see reigning over my kingdom. Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. Like, it goes places, it does develop. Actually, a large part of like me playing around with development and how the inner parts work together. This is not the orchestrated version, but the orchestrated version was heavily influenced by Sondheim as well, because of that kind of long line development. But tunefulness with a whimsy, right? Reigning Over My Kingdom, very Sondheim. But also, he's not afraid of dissonance, right? He's someone who leans in at times, to the point where sometimes people are like, Sondheim, come on, how are we supposed to sing this? But we always find a way, don't we? And the purposeful leaning into dissonance is something that a lot of writers seem afraid of these days. I don't know why. Dissonance is beautiful, right? Storytelling in music is tension and release. Storytelling in general is tension and release, especially for musical theater. And Sondheim was a master at taking dissonance and twisting it and using it to his purposes, so that when we finally hit moments of release, we're like, oh, that. The world just opened up and it's beautiful. So I took that and ran with it. I love dissonance. Sometimes people tell me, this is hard. I'm like, hey, if you can sing Sondheim, you can certainly sing my material. I'm like, I'm not taking it to an extreme. So I'm not doing Adam Gettle over here, you know. Not that he's extreme, just like, so that music's really hard. And then he also does this beautiful thing of balancing the familiar with the challenging, right? And it's part of what, even when he's leaning into dissonance and discord musically, it's part of what allows his music to still come through and shine in a way that feels doable. I'm pulling up an example from, let's do a little Sweeney Todd here. Yeah, I mean, if we look at A Little Priest, so we have this happening, right? It's priest, I'm a little priest. Is it really good, sir? It's too good, at least. Where are we headed here? All the dissonance, right? Kind of just popped in there. It will get a lot crunchier than this eventually, where we start wondering, what are these chords sometime? What are we doing? Oh, this isn't the fun version of the score. That's okay. I can't really point it out in this version. But all of it is built over this bum, 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 in a circus waltz, right? If you give people enough to like grasp onto. They're not going to feel too far afield. They will buy anything you put in front of them. Is there something later? This version of the score is the easier one. No. Darn. It's okay, hold on. We can do it also in a cognitive dissonance way through... if we look at the third Joanna... Sorry, my score is not moving. One moment, friends. Okay, so yes, we can do it just like in pure music world, but we can also do it in terms of the story, right? So during the sequence, if you haven't seen Sweeney, sorry, I'm going to spoil it. If you haven't seen the sequence yet where... Wait, no. Looking at the sequence where we are murdering all the people and baking them into pies in Act 2. While that horrible thing is happening in front of us, we also have this happening. Just a beautiful little tune, right? And are you beautiful and pale with yellow hair like her? I want you beautiful and pale the way I dreamed you were, Joanna. Give the people something familiar. We're very familiar with a nice little 2 suspension over a bump, 1, 5. Da ta 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 da 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 da, right? And that will buy anything over that. Sondheim is also very famous for saying, you give us a pedal tone or a 1-5 movement and you can put anything on top and people will buy it. I think he said it in Sondheim on Music. And I was like, wait, what? Hold on. So I took it and I used it and I ran with it. And it's great because it's true. Right? If you want to disturb your audience while giving them something to be grounded to, not disturb in like the extreme version, just like if you want to give them something that makes them feel a certain way, but still want them to be grounded, put something familiar in there that they can latch onto. It's important. And then the other thing that I really took from Sondheim is this question of like, what can a musical do? Right? He was never afraid to look at musical theater as a genre and say, okay, yes, that works and a lot of people do it, but what else, right? He was not a huge fan of 32-bar songs. He wrote them when necessary or when useful, but again, he very famously talks about wanting to leave it behind. What else can we do besides 32-bar? And he found a lot of song structures that work really, really well that are not the 32-bar chorus. And then he just kind of played with it from there. And then we look at the kinds of shows that he wrote, where Act 1 is so different from Act 2, right? Where the music is asking a lot of the audience, where tunefulness is not a part of every single song, but in the moments when it's most important. Where dissonance is a part of the soundscape of the show, where the flow of the piece does not meet what your expectations are. He played. And I love playing with form. I think it's fun. So, like, these are the things that I took from Sondheim. And I don't think he could lay claim to any of them, even if he wanted to, and he clearly didn't want to. For him, inspiration is inspiration. You take it and you run with it. And I think that's true of all these three. Alan Menken, Kenner and Ebb, and Sondheim. They're not my only inspirations. They're just like my 3 biggest in music. Take what works from people. Quote things if you really want to give a nod, but don't steal. And then, go forth and write your stuff. Make it you. Make it sound like you. Well, that's my diatribe about inspirations. Sorry, I'm so congested. Spring is getting me. The pollen, y'all. So, if anyone here has any questions they want to ask, I'm here for a little Ask Me Anything. I'm happy to answer some stuff. In the meantime, while you're typing out anything you want to ask, just a reminder, Book and Beyond, the book writing libretto writing course is now open for application. Got a few applications already. We'll see how it fills up. 6 spots only for this first run of the course. Starts April 30th, I believe. Runs for 12 weeks. I'm excited about it. Hey, JT. I'm glad you're here with us. Yay! I miss you. I miss seeing your face every week. The libretto course should be fun. So if you want to learn more about writing the book for a musical, / what the book of a musical is, which is a misconception. I should make a video about that. Clear that up. But anyway, that will be available, so you can check that out. I'll put a link in the comments afterwards and pin it. JT, any tips for supporting your composer? Supporting them, what, emotionally? I mean, always be kind to your composer. Supporting them as a... supporting your composer as a book writer. I mean, the only thing that jumps immediately in mind is making sure that you are communicating deeply. Like, being able to come together and make sure you're on the same page about everything. If you are handing things over to the composer to work with and just saying go, makes me wonder, are you on the same page? Beyond that, like, no, I think communication is a major thing. Like, collaborate actively. That would be what I would say. And I don't know if that is a useful answer, but that is the answer I've got for you. If you wanted something more specific out of that, though, let me know. Happy to talk about it. Anything else from anyone today? YouTube is not telling me who is actually on with us, so I don't even know how many people are here. Oh, boy. Alright. Shift that over. Maybe? Maybe not? It's okay if there's no more questions today. Happy to hop off a little early today. I've got a couple writing meetings I've got to get to, so that's totally cool. If you were with me here live, thank you for being here live. If you were on the replay, thank you for watching the replay. Feel free to comment any questions you have, or thoughts, or reflections. Feel free to come and join us in the Musical Theater Writing Collective. We're growing every day. It's great. The group of people is wonderful. And I'm also, of course, happy to answer questions about Book and Beyond, the libretto course, as well. So if you have any, let me know. Otherwise, my friends, thank you for being here. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a beautiful week, couple of weeks, before I see you again on live stream.